Back in the 50s and 60s, pheasant hunting reigned supreme in many parts of the Midwest, but especially Iowa. Opening day had a special status as several generations would gather at the family farm or other coveted properties to match wits with the king of the upland birds. These experiences remain with us for a lifetime and become memories from the field. Welcome to another episode of Memories from the Field, and tonight we get a chance to talk to one of my friends who grew up hunting in Iowa, but he also grew up mostly and hunted a lot in Nebraska. And so we have Scott Jennings on tonight. And Scott, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Wade.
I know that we had hunted quite a bit over the years ourselves here in Iowa, but I remember you always telling me about what it was like growing up in Nebraska and kind of where you cut your teeth on hunting. Where did you grow up in Nebraska?
Well, we started. My dad's from Iowa and Sergeant Bluff, Iowa, and that's where he started here working. But anyway, I was born in Sioux City, and when I was 5 years old, he took transfer. He was with a propane company, and they sent him over to a small town in Nebraska called Neely, Nebraska. And so I spent my grade school and high school years there. So that's when where I started hunting from. And, coming from a hunting family, my grandfather there in Sergeant Bluff, I used to tell about hunting on the Missouri River, back when in the 1920s and 30s, and that always interested me. And he showed me some pictures, and we ended up getting his shotgun. And kind of interesting, they used to use live decoys, and Grandma would talk about how he keep these live ducks,
really,
all through the years, and
wow.
Would put little harnesses on them when they'd use them, and they'd have half a dozen of them, and put a weight on them, throw them down out there, and they'd have live decoys, and of course they're pretty liberal on the limits and stuff like that back then. And then on my other side, my grandfather was he was a farmer in Kansas, and they used to hunt coon a lot down there, and he had two of the big coon dogs, and I can remember visiting down there and going down there, and they had the blue ticks and red bones, and would go out in the woods at night, and you could hear the coon hounds howling, this, that, and the other, and of course they would get them treed and shoot them out of the trees, and I remember seeing them skin them and everything, and of course that was to make money. That was part of their income there on the farm, is back when trapping was profitable. And so that was, I got, it kind of interest on both sides there. And that's kind of piqued me when I was younger.
Now, did you experience any bird hunting during that period of time? And now I know you hunted ducks. Your one grandfather hunted ducks, but for instance, in Kansas, was he also a pheasant hunter as well as a coon hunter, or when was it when you first experienced that?
They're this pretty hardworking farmers, and they didn't get too excited about, actually going out and hunting pheasants. I think they used to shoot them off the tractor, for food and stuff.
Sure.
But they never, their dogs were coon dogs and stuff like that. And Grandpa Jennings, he had friends that had labs that they would use on the river on their duck hunts, but neither one really got that much into the pheasant or upland game side. So
how did you kind of get into the bird hunting then? Is that something you developed on your own later on, or where did that come from?
Well, I had a friend of mine, then he was a year older than me, and his family's more into hunting, and so we kind of got started, I don't know, when I was 10, 12, 13 years old, and he liked to hunt rabbits, and he had a beagle named Sam, and we'd go out and walk mainly along creek beds and the river beds where there was more foliage, and we'd hunt rabbits,
Sure.
and we kind of got started on that, and then of course you'd run across occasional pheasant, and we started getting really interested in that, and so that kind of evolved into me getting into another group, a couple of brothers that I grew up with, Tom and Jerry, were both pheasant. They like to pheasant hunt and stuff, and so we got into that. And that's basically who I hunted with, and then some of my classmates too. When I got up into high school, and we never had that many dogs. Tell you the truth, Wade. I mean, back then you had a lot of good places to hunt. I mean, they had shelter belts. They had smaller farms, and they didn't have all the herbicides, so you had a lot of weeds when they picked the corn. And
Right.
I mean, you really didn't need them. I mean, we just kind of go out, and we had friends that let us hunt. A lot of farmers we went to school with, their families, and the bird was plentiful. I mean, I can remember when I was in high school, you could shoot 4 roosters and 1 hen, and so
Four,
that was that
four,
was a, that was limit.
really? Four roosters
And
and a hen, really? Wow.
and a hen and a hen and a hen.
Hmm.
And like I said, a lot of fields, and and we started off lots of times just walking the ditches. The roads weren't that developed in a lot of places, secondary roads, and a lot of plum thickets and fully a lot of grass in the roads, and you just put one guy on each side of the road and walk the ditches, and do pretty good that way, to tell you the truth. So that's kind of how it all developed, and of course we had a lot more quail back then, and you'd run across wild, a lot of wild quail, and little rabbits were plentiful, and they even had jackrabbits running around there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Now,
don't see those anymore, but it
no,
was it was a good time, good hunting.
I think they had
So
those in Iowa too back in the day. We've had a couple interviews or they've talked about jackrabbits over around Des Moines area, and
yeah.
I think we even used to have a few of those down in the Kansas City area years ago. But so where you grew up in Nebraska, so it'd be fair to say that it's a more rural community, I suspect, smaller town.
Well, it was a small town. I think it's about 1,700 people.
Okay,
Just like a lot of the Iowa towns. The same thing, primary farming.
but
And
but back then though, that one of those activities obviously was hunting and getting out in the field and with your buddies or family or whatever. That was kind of a like it was in Iowa. It was a big thing
oh yeah,
back
yeah,
then. What was
oh
like?
yeah,
Was opening day a big thing too for you guys back in the
oh
day?
sure, yeah, yeah. You'd have you didn't have all the vehicles and stuff like that, but I mean, and not a lot of the specialization we have now with all the different equipment and custom kennels and all that stuff. But opening day was a big deal, and they'd have breakfasts with a lot of communities, their fire departments or whatever would have sponsor breakfasts on opening day of pheasant season,
Right.
and a lot of people in the Long Range and go out and get after them. So
Now, were there a lot of
yeah, it was
out-of-state
big.
people that came into Nebraska back then to hunt on opening day or not?
No, I can't remember being that many really out of state folks. We used to have, folks come up, from Omaha is the biggest city there in Nebraska, and
Mm-hmm.
and people would travel up to the different parts of the further away from Omaha, and you get a hotel room for a couple of days on opening, and go out and shoot some birds, and that's about the only time I saw them, But
Yeah. Yeah.
they would show up for opening weekend and stuff like that, but not so much out of state people. I mean, we had the relatives down in Kansas City, and we had some in South Dakota, and both those Kansas and South Dakota. I mean, they had a lot of birds up there too. So
Yeah. So you had Kansas,
back there.
Nebraska, and South Dakota. You had the trifecta there going.
Yeah, but I was a little skinner there, and again, a lot of those my relatives there in South Dakota too. I mean, they were farmers, and they really
Yeah.
didn't get into hunting that seriously. Like I said, if they can run across pheasant, they shoot it, but not like we do now. So.
Not like it is now, where it's kind of an income source for a lot of these landowners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and of course the farmers are a lot smaller. I mean, they were 80 acres, 160 acres. I mean, nothing like it is now.
So
And the vegetation was just that, they had so much habitat. So,
so would it be fair to say, like we used to do opening weekend, you kind of had your honey spots that were spoken for, that your buddy either family members owned or your family owned, so you kind of had those special spots already lined up for opening
yeah,
day?
yeah, you did. Or I was, opening day, it was kind of, like it is over here. It was, I mean, but, the family would save the opening day for, the cousins and everybody
Right.
come back for it. I mean, opening day was usually, might be harder because the family guys would come back and open. Yeah, but after that, I mean, you go knock on the door and they say, go knock yourself out.
Right.
So.
So as you got older and eventually left Nebraska or went to college and moved from there, how did the bird hunting kind of go with you, I guess, and what did you do to continue on with that passion that you had developed early on in Nebraska?
Well, I enjoyed it. I really did. And always, even when I was away from Nebraska, I kept that contact with my high school buddies, and there were 4 or 5 of us that really liked it, and they those guys there as well. A couple of them got short hairs, and while I was in college and stuff, we started using the hunting with the short hairs, etc. And others had some labs that we used. But then progressing on further, I moved on. I was transferred over to Illinois and in the Chicago area, and I had a friend of mine that had a Brittany, and he liked to bird hunt too. He was originally from Texas, but nice little female, and they got her bred and had pups, and his name is Royce, and he said, "Yeah, you're welcome to one if you want one." It's about time I was getting married, and we had a house in Chicago there that's on a corner lot, an older house, and I always was interested in a hun dog, but I couldn't get anything that big. I mean, we did, postage size yard with a 3 foot woven fence around it, wire stuff, but talked it over and we got him, and we got a male named Ray, and he was our first hunt dog, and I was 27 when I got him, I guess, and he was a pedigreed Brittany, orange and white.
Right,
so.
right, and that kind of started your lifelong love of Brittany's.
Yeah, I'm on my 5th one now.
Yeah. So,
but a good pup. Yeah.
What did you train the dog yourself, or did the dog train you?
Well, a little bit of both,
Okay.
and but they're like most hunt dogs, they're smart and they're well adapted. The Brittany's are, I think they like to please, and training back then, I mean, he didn't have any of the electric collars or any of that stuff, and we used to, I'd read up on and stuff, talk to other guys, and use the check cord and things of that nature. But the biggest advantage I found out is I'd haul them back to, Nebraska, and by that time, Jerry and some of his friends had those short hairs for a while, and were pretty good working dogs, and I got that Brittany with them. And I taught him the basics, the sitcom, all that other stuff, and wool especially. He would wool for me and everything. But took him out with those with the short hairs at that time, and of course we were walking 5 or 6 in those fields, across, and they'd work. I call it running the line, and they'd work, across 5 or 6 guys and turn and come back, and they point, and of course we get the bird, and then they retrieve and all over that. But I think that's one of the best things I could do with that new dog, because I mean he had a tendency at first to kind of take off and run and shit, and oops, and do that stuff.
Well,
But
they
he
did that too.
catch on like the rest of them.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it takes.
He'd catch on, and before you know it, he was running the line, and he'd honor the points, and
yeah.
And pointies and that Brittany's are naturally pointing dogs, and I don't think there's too many will hold as long as a Brit, to tell you the truth. I mean, that's one thing I have seen, and they will hold that point. They got excellent noses, and they're there to please. I mean, they like to. They'll come back to you. They'll I call it check in. And they say, I think your dogs do the same thing. I mean, they come by and
Yeah.
and run by you. And sometimes when they don't, they'll get, the grass. I mean, they're short, and I've even seen them, out in the field and then in heavier grass. They'll stand on their hind legs looking for you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
wave to them, and I'm over here. So,
Yeah.
so that's kind of and I learned a lot too. I mean, as a new hunter, and you want to go out there and control them and all that stuff. And over the years, you learn that those dogs know a heck of a lot more about how to find birds and how to get them than you do. So keeping them under control and leave them alone.
You learn just to stay out of the way. Stay out of the way.
Exactly.
So obviously, there's nothing that makes you prouder than to have that dog out there in the field and make that first point or retrieve that first bird, and especially when you got buddies out there that you're hunting with. Do you kind of remember as that dog kind of, became better and got to that point? Do you kind of remember any of those things happening?
I can't remember exactly when the first one was, or either, I hunted with a crew from out of Illinois too. I mean, there's 4 or 5 of us that we went together, and we found we had some good spots over around South Iowa City and North English and Grinnell, and we hunted those spots. I was assigned there in 75 through 90. So I had actually 2 crews, or 2 bunches to go with. So we hunted a lot over in there, and they didn't have the experience. When we got together. They didn't have any dogs, and so I had my Brett, and then I had another one with that crew too. But I got the first one, and another guy got a Wine. He had a Weimauer, and another guy got a golden retriever, and there was about 6 of us, and so that was our group there in Illinois that would come over to Iowa, and I hunted with them too, and it was a good experience. So,
sure, yeah.
But I can't remember exactly when first one I got with a dog.
Right.
I think it was probably over in Nebraska, but I can't remember the first actual point. Because I think it happened when we were hunting with the big groups, and
sure.
And I remember getting some compliments and stuff, and and the other thing about the Brits, I mean, is they are goers, and they have a lot of stamina, and sometimes we early hunting and stuff in those hot days and stuff, and the big short hairs. You get kind of tired and stuff. That little Brit, I mean, she would keep going, or he would keep going. And
the Brits I've hunted with, they are they go all day. I mean, they don't seem to tire much. I always kind of associated them being real good quail dogs, and a couple of them that I hunted with early in my life, we hunted. A buddy of mine had one, and they hunted quail a lot, and so I just associate that breed a lot with quail. Obviously, they up here they're hunting lots of pheasants as well. Typically, they're on pheasants up here, but I've never been around one in the house. But I'm guessing they're somewhat like setters. They kind of flip the switch when they come into the house after they've been out hunting, and they make a pretty good house dog as well.
They do, and that was one of the requirements that we had. Like I said, we were living at that smaller house, and we couldn't have a kennel or anything like that. It's going to be a house dog, and
right.
They make good house dogs. I mean, they make themselves right at home, and they know every corner of that house, and they're real trainable. Like I said, not that hard to house train and stuff like that. And I found the important thing on with them, and I've kind of passed it on to my kids. I mean, you got to get those dogs on schedules. You get a good good schedule, get them up, feed them, do your routine or whatever, and kind of get in a routine. And they're adaptable, and pretty soon, I mean, they're waiting there to go to bed or waiting there to be fed or whatever, go outside, and that works good. And they kennel well. And again, we were working, both Sue and I, when we had that first one, and quite a ways through our lives, and we were going to work. And so we put that. I put them in. I recommend anybody with hunting dogs. I say you ought to kill them dogs. I mean, don't leave them alone. In the house, when nobody's there, they're going to get in trouble.
Right.
But, so.
And
I got a story about that. If you want to, want to hear that, I had this is, I think, my second one, and we were in Illinois there in Mount Prospect, and we lived in the split level. I had a little room downstairs, kind of a study down there and stuff like that, kind of my room. And at that time, I was doing a lot of fishing out of Lake Michigan. I had caught a real nice Chinook. He was about 33 pounds, and I had him mounted. And I had him mounted on the couch down there in my room, had a little TV and all that other stuff.
I think I know where this is going.
So he was a beautiful mount. Of course, cost me a couple, $300 to get him done. But anyway, at that time, I wasn't kenneling the Brit. And so one afternoon, even I come home, and I said, "Where's that dog?" And Sue says, "Well, he's downstairs doing something, I go down there. He has that whole mount pulled off the wall, and it chewed the tail off it. So, from then on, that boy went in the kennel, I'll tell you.
$300 dog biscuit, huh?
Yeah, geez.
Oh, so, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Poor guy, he was just trying to get game for you. Oh, man.
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, well, that can happen. I thought you were going to say, and he got it stuck in his throat, and you had to take him to the vet, and that cost you another $200.
He managed to chew it gnawed up pretty good, so whatever.
Well, I think we've all had something like that happen to us. I know I have. Anybody that's had dogs during their lifetimes had something like that happen. Had the arm chewed off the couch or something. But yeah. So typically, guys with hunting dogs, especially because, they're used to traveling. Like you said, you're driving to Nebraska and Kansas. And, I was doing the same thing. And so they're typically used to being in a crate for long periods of time. And, and they're pretty much adapted to that. So a lot of times hunting dogs aren't a problem like maybe other dogs would be. But at least he didn't chew something up that belonged to your wife.
No, that's true. That's true.
That was
right
better.
there. They're interesting dogs, and they follow you around all the time, and they want to go everywhere. And the thing about the Brittany's they are smaller, and I kenneled in the truck too, in the trucks, and I was just going to mention these. I've got one of those F-150s like you do, the 4 doors, And when they came out with those things, before that, I had a couple of Zuzu Troopers, were great SUVs, and had that swing out door from the back, and they kennel fit in there real well. But they quit making them, and I've been a Ford guy, and so anyway, they came out with that 4-door one, and so I measured it and everything, and that kennel would just slide right in, right behind the driver's seat, and just fit real nice in there, and train those dogs to kennel truck, and they go right over their door.
Absolutely.
Pop them right up in there, so it's kind of nice to have that, be a little smaller, you can get them in a vehicle like that, so.
Right, I know, my smallest.
And I know you got that. You've got that great trailer.
Yeah, I've got a trailer, and
you're hauling 3 or 4 dogs.
Well, we actually, between my son and I now, we have I think there's 8 altogether. So if you go on a long trip, you need all those compartments. But that's kind of a long trip vehicle. If you're just running to making a short trip to a hunting spot, sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth getting it hitched up and trying to maneuver it around. And so I have a dog box that's rides in the bed of the truck that we
Yeah.
we use a lot. But I also have one, like you said, it slides in the back seat, and the little setter, she's the right size to fit in there, and ride in that. But yeah, it really makes
And they, they came out with the covers for the dog boxes too. And
yeah,
when I'm, in
yep,
Nebraska or Iowa and other, hunted in South Dakota calves, and those covers are good, and you can throw them in the back of the truck and zip them in there, and it keeps them out of the cold and everything else. So
yeah,
that's another thing we didn't have years ago. I'll tell you that.
they've come a long way with some of that stuff, like you
Oh
said, the
yeah.
electronics and I mean, technology is in the dog world as well as everything else now, obviously. So, I'm running GPS on my dogs now. I never thought that would be the case, but it is. And so yeah, everything like that changes. And, some guys like me and you probably still kind of are used to, using some of the old beeper collars a little more. I got used to those, used them for years. So it's kind of hard to switch, but there's a lot of good things
Well,
a lot of good things for
on the
safety.
on the technology, I mean, it has really changed. It's really improved for any pet owners because these electric fences, for you can put in around your home, and I mean those are just outstanding. And I think we put our first one in Cedar Rapids. Sue and I put it in. You got to lay the wire and all that other stuff, put the flags out and everything, and bad flag, and it only takes once or twice, and those dogs they learn it, and it keeps them in there. And the thing about it, I didn't think about but that gives them a vibration for it shocks them,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's the kind of warning. And they figured that out. They're getting the vibration. Well, I better not go any further. But this new dog I got a dog electronic collar. It's been 4 or 5 years ago now. Before they just had the shock option on a lot of them, but these now they have you just you can give them a vibration before it shocks them,
right.
and it's the same thing as that fence. So if they're trained at home on the fence, you take them out in the field, and use that thing and give them a vibration. They're turning around, kind of looking for a flag or something like that. But it works. I mean, they're used to that. I mean, I've had 3 of them I did like that, and that's the technology is just great, and it's still got the shock option, but it's got that locate option. And I run them silent anymore. Usually, I did the same thing with the beepers, but it'll beep when he goes on point,
Right,
and it's got to
right,
locate where you can hit him, and it'll beep so you can find him. But
right.
and it's outstanding. And I really haven't got up to GPS or whatever, but
Well, yeah,
it's neat.
GPS is it's nice if you have a young dog and you're a little concerned that you might, get in some
Mm.
cover where you lose track of where the dog is and that kind of thing, especially if you're going out to big country like South Dakota or a place like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would recommend it, but I still run them both a lot of times. So, because
Mm.
I still want that feedback of hearing that tone,
Yeah.
when I tone the
Oh yeah.
dog, I want to, my hearing, fortunately for me, my hearing is still good enough that I can hear the collar, toning back to me. Maybe the day will come when I can't, but at least right now I still can. Now, when you first kind of got into the shotgun shooting, did you have a preference? Did you use Granddad's gun, or what was the
Well,
fire? What's the
I
firearms
used
like?
I used my grandpa had that Model 12 Winchester. Of course, I was a little guy, and that was pretty good size shotgun. My dad I got my first shotgun. I'm pretty sure when I was 14, and he got me a side by side 12 Stevens, and he says, I got you this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's safe. He
Right.
says all you have to do is open it up and it ain't going to shoot, and it's easy to check, as
Yeah.
far as it's loaded or whatever, and you can shoot a lot of pheasants with it, or shoot about anything with it, and so that's what I started off with, was that side by side
Uh,
Stevens, and it was a heavy gun. I still got it, and well, I took it a couple times when I was hunting with you too. And the other thing I like about those side by sides is they're heavy, But, you know, and I don't know about you, but I mean, you know, I've shot a lot of different shotguns, and you know, you can tell when you're looking over that, looking over the shotgun. You know, you're looking it over, and you don't have your cheek down on it. And one thing about that 012 with the weight of those barrels, you pull it up and it slams into your cheek. You know, it's so heavy, and you're right down on that stock like you should be. And you know, he told me about that too, and it's true. It's true. And it gets you down the stock, and I can shoot good with it.
So you
Anyway,
you still use it every now and then when you kind of want to.
every now and then,
Yeah.
every now and then, and I've kind of gone through them. Well, I think you know, I got the Benelli. I like the Benellis. I like those
Right.
26-inch barrel Benelli, a semi-automatic, and I've also got a over under, which I like that too. You know, it's I shoot trap. You know, I usually shoot that over under, but that's kind of the ones I like. You know.
What now? How often do you get out hunting these days? I mean, typically in a season, you're probably doing mostly wild bird hunting, I suspect.
Yeah, I am. And like I said, our group over there in Nebraska is kind of, you know, everybody's aging out, and we got a couple of guys that have physical problems, and you know, just can't hunt anymore. And another guy just kind of got tired of it, and so it's kind of there's this couple guys into it now, and we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, and I got over where I am now about 6, 7 years ago, and I'm not far from Red Rock, and it's got all this Corps engineer land around it. You know, it's open for hunting. It's also got that big Neil Smith hunting area out there west, and I had the same thing in Coralville when I was in Cedar Rapids. You know,
Right.
you're familiar down around the Coralville and all that the
Yeah.
Corps engineer land down there and all that, and all hunting areas, and it's about the same around here, only more. I mean, and I usually be able to find some birds. I go, you know, by myself a lot. I just didn't have any hunting partners over here like I did in Cedar Rapids and stuff. So, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing. And then we got the preserve or the hunting preserve, similar to what you worked on there south there.
Right. Right.
It's called Bensink Farms,
Bentzic
and
Farms.
he's got Bensink, and he's been in business a long time, and he's the original farm owner, and he's got 500 some acres. He does an excellent job. He's got 7, 8 fields, and I mean, he still grows the corn and stuff, but nice fields and great birds. I don't know where he gets his birds. Beautiful pheasants, and he's got chuckers and quail, and I like those chuckers. They're like a giant whale, and the thing about them is they're all white meat, you know. So
Yeah.
I like
They're
those chuckers.
they're tougher than nails too. Those birds.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
are. They
I
are. So anyway, got a kind of a combination. Though, and the older you get, you know, I can go out and you know, I usually go out and get. I don't get up real early or whatever. I'm in the field by 9. Hunt couple 2.5 hours or so, maybe grab a bite to eat, and maybe a little bit after lunch, and that's about it. You know,
yeah
yeah,
yeah.
I'm kind of pooped out, and so
But you're
whatever. It depends. If
hey,
I if I find them, then I'll stay out there.
but you're out there and you got to get that dog out there, obviously. And
Oh
now
yeah,
how
yeah.
many
Well,
is he on his? That'll be his second season coming up here in the fall, or
oh no, he's
he's
I lost Rusty when I moved over here, and that's about 7, 8 years ago. He's going to be 8,
oh
so
okay, he's a veteran then.
he's getting up there. And he's, I mean, like I said, he knows what the hell he's doing,
Good.
which is nice. It's just really nice. And you just lay him out and say, all right, let's go. And I mean, he amazes me. I mean, he'll even respond to some of the hand signals for me now, you know, and he's out there running. If I'm running along a tree line or something, he's going the other way. I'll tweet at him or whatever and point over and shit, he'll go over there. He'll get in the tree. So
Now,
he's quite a dog. And
now how
I'm
do
real
you
pleased with him. So
now do you did you make any trips to South Dakota and Kansas over the years, or did you mainly go to
yeah,
Nebraska?
I went to South Dakota. I can't remember when it was. I was still in Cedar Rapids. I went there up there a couple times with different groups, and enjoyed it up there. Just this big country up there, and we were. Can't exactly remember. We were on the central part, and Jesus, it was like a little house on the prairie up there, and 1 foot tall.
I remember
And that's one I see. And she was a chocolate and real, but she couldn't get in that stuff. And fortunately, we had the guy with me. He had one of those linebacker labs, I call them. I mean, that thing was about 110 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Broad across his chest and a big old wide head on it, black as coal. And I mean, he could get in there and bust through those cattails and stuff, especially for retrieving. We'd knock one down in there, and he'd go in there and find the thing. And we'd hunt lighter stuff too, but it was fun. There's a lot of birds and stuff like that. And
yeah, I think everybody ought to experience that at least once. And I was just curious how that compared with Nebraska. It was a kind of probably the similar in terrain, I would guess, but it's mostly open.
Well, it was quite a bit of, there was less houses up there for sure. And, we had, back in the day when we had all the CPR, I mean, we had a couple tracks west of town there. And I mean, shit, they have them, 2 or 3 miles in CRP. So, I mean, you could go out there and walk all day, and it was big. It wasn't quite as rough as up there in South Dakota, but a lot of area.
Yeah, I think the last time I hunted in South Dakota, we were on a ranch, and I think it was 20,000 acres. You just can't even believe how something that big. You're like, where do you start hunting? Well,
where do you start?
Pick a place and start walking. It's like, oh my gosh, but lots of birds, and unfortunately, and one time Iowa was like that, as you know. Probably when you came from Illinois to hunt in Iowa, it was.
Oh yeah,
it was prime.
I hunted Iowa from with that crew from Illinois from about 80 to 90, and then that's when I come back over to Iowa. We got moved back over to Iowa, and those were good years. I mean, they had over that area around Grinnell and south of Iowa City and over there in North English and stuff, and they still had quite a bit of cover and stuff, and the farms are smaller and stuff.
And that was
we get plenty of birds. I mean, we might not limit out, but we got them. If we could hit them all, we'd be probably limit out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But we had good. It was a good hunt, and it's the same thing. Opening day. We had a favorite restaurant we went to, and packed with hunters. And it was good times. So.
Yeah, lots of change, unfortunately, and I mean, there's probably less people hunting today than there has been for many, many years, and unfortunately, it takes guys like you and I to keep the dog hunting kind of tradition going, and and if you don't have somebody kind of pass that on when we're too old to do it anymore, you wonder at what point where there won't be any more hunting dogs out there being utilized for that. Hopefully there will be, but I'm sure there's not as many as there was at one time.
Yeah, and that's what kind of scares me. I mean, you see some of the hunting dogs being, well, the golden retriever is a good example. I mean, they're hunting dogs, but I mean, they're just pretty dogs. They're just pretty dogs now. I mean, they're just big pets and stuff. I haven't seen a golden retriever in years in the field. And,
No,
you just don't see them, and they're nice dogs, but they were good retrievers. That one that my friend had it wasn't like a pointer. I mean, it wouldn't cover that much ground, but they could find them and stuff.
Now, let me just ask you this because you've hunted with dogs pretty much all your life, at least in your adult life. How did that change your enjoyment of the hunt, or when you got that dog, how did that kind of just change things up for you?
Well, I mean, it puts more pressure on you for one thing. If you're hunting with a group, I mean, you want your dog to perform well, so you pay more attention to it or whatever. Work forces you to work more off season. But it brings a lot of pride too when they do well and you get compliments with them. And they're just entertaining. I swear to God. I mean, I go a lot by myself, but even when we're in groups, I mean, those dogs do crazy shit, you know, and it's just funny. I mean, we were hunting over there by Iowa City one time. We hunted a tree line. We had to cut across an open pasture to get back over to another draw we wanted. And it was just a pasture, you know, short grass, and there's some cows in there. They went down the corner, and fortunately the dog didn't bother him. But it was early on. It must have been in October 1st or 2nd weekend. And I had that crazy Ray with me, and you know, he's cruising around there, and there's cow shit out there, you know. And I was kind of turning my head, and he's going off to the right, and then Ron says, "What is that dog doing?" I look over there about 20 yards, and there's this giant cow pie, fresh, and he was rolling on his back, all 4 feet up, small shit flying all over the place. I said, "What are you doing?" You know? Anyway, got him out of there, and he was that trip. He was known as a lean green hunting machine, you know.
So, who gave him the bath when he got home? You or your wife?
Well, and we were staying in a hotel, so fortunately, we come across. Then I knew the pond was over there, so I grabbed him and you know, gave him a pretty good washing off in that pond. And then, of course, he was in the shower with me at the hotel too. But whatever. Lean green hunt machine.
Lean green hunt machine. Perfect. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't a skunk. You know.
Well, I had to run into that too.
Yeah. Everybody's had his little skunk story.
Yeah, that's well, you know, the breaths we use, I'm using it for duck hunting too. I go out, you know, by myself, do a little duck hunting down there in Corville too, you know, because they cruise there, especially early in the season when it wasn't too cold, you know, and I'd hunt for pheasants and to get around out there around those low fields, and they'd have water, and I knew there'd be cute teal going through there, so. I get down there early one morning. That's still when I had one of those Azuzas, and that's had Ray. And I got so him when he was a little older. Then he would sit still long enough to hunt ducks. You know, when they're younger, you can't hold them. And anyway, I had him trained to sit there and he'd retrieve them. So I was going in there, I had my waders on, back, you know, the bag full of decoys in my back and my double barrel, you know, head back there in dark, you know, and I had it was about 300 yards from the road, that pothole I was going to.
Yeah.
So I get about 100 yards in there, and I don't have him on the lead or anything, and I smell a skunk. I said, you know, I start calling, too late. He already got smelly. I said, well, shit. Might as well go hunting, you know. So anyway, I went out there, threw my deeks out and stuff, and ended up shooting a couple of ducks, you know. And so about 10:30 or so, I head on back and get in the parking lot. Of course, he steps like a son of a gun, and there wasn't much you could do about him. I threw him in the kennel back there. I guess I don't have to kill him. You know, I tried to wash him off in the pond and pothole, and I got some of it off. But anyway, I'm sitting there, I'm taking my waders off, and up pulls this DNR car. You know, it's a game warden, and the warden gets out. It's just a female game warden. I mean, she's just a nice looking little gal, blonde gal, you know. And she walks over. She says, "What?" You know? Anyway, I told her that story, and I said, let me get the ducks there in the truck. She said, "Don't worry about it, you know. I take your word for it." You know? we had a good laugh about that.
Number one, it's not me, it's the dog. That's the first sign.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
anyway, you know, that's the downside with having that kennel inside the vehicle with you, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, at least when they're in the trailer, you know, they're back there on the way home. But boy, you got one in the trailer with you. You know, it's I've always talked about
windows down all the way home.
Yeah.
Get the hose out. You know.
Wow. Yeah, try to
whatever.
I actually carry it. I've never had to use it, thank goodness. But I actually, for years, have carried a bottle of some kind of skunk repellent, or you know, some kind of skunk, you know, removal kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now whether it ever work or not, who knows? Probably not, but it was recommended. Oh, this is the greatest thing, and so I carry it. I don't know if I'd ever, and I don't ever want to use it, but I never have had to. But ooh, yeah.
Hope you don't have to, because it's a challenge.
Yeah, you definitely want your dog to be at heel if when the skunk shows up. I've had a few close calls, but I've never really got one doused. Maybe that's the difference between the setters and the Brits. The setters.
Yeah, I don't know.
The setters go, I don't think I'm going to go over there and check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pitch black. I don't know. He might have just.
He just happened. Yeah. Well, he said, "Hey, boss, look at this. There's something over here. You need to check this out." Oh my God. I'm trying to picture you out in the dark with your decoys on your back and tromping through some
through the weeds and stuff, And,
that's why I never hunted ducks. I just looked like too much work to me to and to have to get up that early in the morning to get out there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, my brother, he's got a good setup over there in around Columbus. He's right by the Platte River and that other river there, and that country's just flat as a pancake, and those rivers just spread out, and there's all kinds of backwaters and all that other stuff. And his father-in-law is really into it, and Todd and his two boys, and they're into it now. And they got a nice setup, and I usually run over there and hunt some ducks. But I leave the bread at home. They've got those big labs, and those labs are fun to watch. I mean, this kind of weather and ice in there, ice in the water, and I mean, they just love it.
I know it.
They dive right in that stuff.
Oh man, they live for it.
They're impressive, I'll tell you.
They live for it. That's no doubt about that. It's great. It's great stuff, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to tell us some of your memories and some of your stories, and that's what we look forward to doing.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. It's fun this reminiscing and talking with you get a bunch of guys there, hunters around. Everybody's got their stories, but it is, and it's kind of sad, with there's so few farms anymore, and that's what generated a lot of the hunters, and the grandkids now. I've got them, and they're so busy. I mean, they got all the sports and show choir and this and that and the mock trial and all this, so they have no freaking time. And like I said, unless they have a parent or something. But I shoot out there at that Monroe Sportsman's Club, and what they have done is they've introduced trap and skeet into the high schools, and they got a lot of teams now, high school teams, and they come out there and they practice there at the gun club, which is encouraging to see. You see, a bunch of kids out there, and most of them, and boys and girls too, and then there's a lot of them that are really interested now. Those classes, I think they're generating some interest in hunting, and of course Pheasants Forever with their mentor hunts and all that other stuff. I mean, hopefully they can keep it generated. So.
Well, like you said, when you and I grew up, we didn't have all that other activity stuff. No. It was the outdoors. It was fishing and hunting, and that's just what we did, and that's what we learned to enjoy and love. And like I said, if we would have had all the other stuff in our lives, maybe it would have been different. But we were. I remember we carried a shotgun in the truck, and when high school, you still had about an hour and a half of light. Go
hunting an hour after school. I mean,
absolutely, you did.
You go 3 miles out of town, and you had your jeans on and stuff, whatever. Yeah. Of course, that's all you wore at school, jeans.
And our high school was a consolidated school that was out in the middle of the country anyway, and so you didn't have to go very far from the parking lot to got to be in some hunting areas. And so I remember, hey, let's hunt for an hour, after school, and nobody thought anything of it, that there'd be vehicles parked out there in the parking lot with shotguns in them. That was just
Oh yeah.
That was just right of
Had the
passage.
rack in there, had the rack in the back. You know what the hell?
Absolutely. But it's good to see.
And the other thing, driving now, I'm out here, running up and down the county roads or whatever, and I get into deer hunting and the turkey too. So this off season, I'll go out and I'll take the dog out running those state areas looking for turkey tracks and deer scrapes and all that other stuff.
Sure.
But it's just kind of fun. It's sad, when you get out in the country and there's hardly any vegetation left. It's just like a moonscape, and it's just nothing there. And I can remember, growing up, and you used to see pheasants. This time of year, you'd see pheasants out scratching around for the corn and everything, and running across the road and everything else. And there's quite a few of them, and I've seen, I think, 2, all season, around the roads or whatever.
Yeah, it's hopefully we can keep it going, and as long as there's habitat, I think there'll be birds. But as you said, that's the challenge, is keeping habitat on the ground, and we just don't have enough of that these days as we used to. But we do with what we can, and I think that's why.
Another thing, when we're talking about it, talking about my grandpa and Grandpa George, and they're hunting those coons. Coons are all over the place, and nobody traps them anymore. And I think they're if you get a population of pheasants going, they love those eggs, and they love those smaller pheasants, and they got a lot of things to overcome, and that ban on trapping, I think it hurt the pheasants.
Yeah, I think everything kind of compounds itself, and. But they're tough birds, and if you give them half a chance, they'll try to come back and hang in there. That's what I guess we all love about them, is their ability to to survive through these harsh winters, and like you said, all the predators and everything else. I just can't even imagine that any of them are out there anymore, but they are. So we got to keep it going when we can, and hopefully pass it on to. A next generation, but that's getting harder and harder to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I thank you for all you've done too, Wade, with all your guiding and everything. That's very admirable, and you put a lot of time with your pups and your dogs, and you got some great dogs. Always enjoyed hunting behind them. They're good dogs, though.
Well, we've got
I know you put a lot of time, and I got your sons into it, so that's great.
Yeah, and that was kind of, but it's kind of like you mentioned earlier, that you kind of got to make a point to fit it in. They were in sports and all kinds of other stuff as well, but opening weekend or something, we always tried to sneak a hunt in when we could, maybe not very often, but just to make sure that they had some connection to what that dog did when he wasn't on the couch, you know what I mean? And and that that their grandfather and great grandfather had kind of passed on a legacy of hunting, and tried to keep that going. And so to this day, the boys are they don't hunt as much because their kids are. My oldest, his kids are really active and stuff, and so he doesn't have a lot of time. But Trav has the middle one has some hunting dogs now, and so I've got a lot of dogs left for you to hunt over one of these days. So dogs you haven't seen yet. So it's kind of one of those. It's kind of one of those deals where you just keep opening another door on that trailer, and another dog will be coming out. That's a different color and a different size, and that kind. We got a little work to do with a few of them, but we'll get there. So we'll try. Yeah. We'll make it a point to get out this fall.
Full episodes of the Setter Tales podcast, now on the Agra America Podcast Network.
To hear more or to share your memories from the field, visit us at sweetpointsetters.com.